Welcome to Marketing D-Coded, the podcast where we unravel the mysteries of marketing for busy business owners. Here are your hosts, Daniel Kodum and Jackie Strack.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing Decoded, where we like to bring about practical, holistic approaches to marketing. I'm Daniel, and I'm here with my co-host, Jackie. We're part of D-Kode Marketing. So today we want to talk about bringing on an outside marketing person. A lot of companies, especially as they're starting out from a mom and pop shop, go, I need to bring on a part-time person to help me out, to either do social media, flyers, or usually it's a jack of all trades, kind of the handyman of marketing. And this can be great, but it can cause a lot of challenges because there can be unrealistic expectations or unknown challenges that most business owners don't know because one, the business owner may not know what is going on, and the marketing person may not have all the skill sets the business owner is doing. But we'll dive deep into that. Today, we're going to talk about a company, SOS Tech. They are a Southern California-based managed IT service. They do all the typical stuff a managed IT company does, cybersecurity, managing your computers, making sure you stay up. They're 24/7 service. And a lot of times this is a very important service for business owners because they need their computers to make sure that they continue to service their customers. Jackie?
So SOS Tech had a solid reputation when they came to us with a lot of 5-star reviews and happy clients. But the one challenge that we noticed right away from them is that they had one in-house marketing person handling all of their social media, their LinkedIn prospecting, their newsletters, and their blogs. So that was a challenge right away. Our goal was to find the gaps in their strategy and find a way for them to have a solid stream of qualified leads.
So before we jump into the different strategies and what SOS Tech was doing, let's just talk about in-house marketing. I started a little bit of a preview talking about the different aspects. So marketing is very broad. If you were here 40, 50 years ago, marketing was much more simplistic. As technology has expanded, the number and avenues and ways to market have increasingly grown, which means the number of skill sets required to do marketing has grown. However, mom and pop companies that hire an in-house marketing person often bring them on with certain expectations, and those expectations usually keep getting added on it, but they don't stop and ask themselves a very important question. Is this person qualified to give me all of the tasks I need done? If you go to most larger marketing companies, they have someone who does social media, they have someone who writes content, they have someone who designs something, they have someone who manages the website, etc., etc., etc. Why do they do this? Because there is not a jack of all trades. They may be good or okay with some stuff, but they are not necessarily the best or very strong in many aspects. So when a person brings an in-house marketing person, one has to first ask, what are the most important aspects of my marketing? What skill sets are they needing? And how does that translate into this person that I'm considering or people I'm considering? Jackie, what have you noticed when you've dealt with in-house marketing person? What have been the challenges you've noticed, whether it's SOS Tech or others who have in-house marketing people?
I've definitely noticed that sometimes a person can be brought into a business because they are good at one thing, and then a lot of other expectations get placed on that one in-house marketing person. And sometimes cracks start to show, but because the business owner is already invested in this in-house marketer and maybe they've invested time or training or resources, it can be hard to either diversify or even notice when there are those gaps that are really affecting the overall marketing.
Yeah, I mean, one other example outside of SOS Tech is we work with a international nonprofit, and they really do a lot of blogging with volunteers in-house, but their blogging was rather weak for their in-house marketing people because they didn't know marketing. They didn't know how to write for marketing. They
Mm-hmm.
wrote just as general writers, a casual observer. So what was happening, even though they were writing, their SEO was oftentimes tanking. So it became essential to add that extra level of support to either review or do the writing for them, because otherwise it wasn't accomplishing the inherent goal of the blogs, which was to increase their SEO ranking.
And that good content can get wasted if it's not optimized the right way.
Absolutely. And you'll hear us often in our podcast episodes talk about the importance of content. And speaking of content, that's actually where I want to start as far as SOS. Their biggest challenge we noticed early on was their content. The person they had hired was an overseas individual. Nothing wrong with that. However, their English was not very strong. As a result, there were grammatical mistakes, there were spelling mistakes, they weren't very persuasive, and they used a lot of irregular sounding sentences. So it made it very choppy and not very persuasive when this person was going out trying to do outreach through LinkedIn or even writing content for the website. What did you notice, Jackie, as it related to working with their marketing person and content?
It did make it more challenging with the language barrier. I think there can be a challenge when you're doing cold outreach to multiple businesses that are in different industries. And if there is that language barrier, it can make it harder to make that connection. It's already hard enough to make a connection with somebody over email or over a LinkedIn or something like that, to the point where the prospect wants to reach out and continue the conversation. So if there's anything that feels off about the outreach, it makes it even more difficult. So I did notice some challenges there for sure.
Yes. And a lot of this then translated into other areas of the website. And this is the part where whenever we're reviewing a client's marketing, business, etc., the foundational piece we'll look at is their website. And
Mm-hmm.
people will say, well, I'm not looking for leads online. Well, if you think that someone who gets referred to you is not looking at your website, you're generally gravely mistaken. 85% of people look at a person's website. You do not necessarily need to be outwardly marketing in the online space, but you should still have a very strong, effective website. And in SOS's case, the number one thing we found early on were structural issues with their website.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about structural issues. Structural issues are things that make the website clunky, hard to follow, that make it unable to be used. So the first most noticeable thing we noticed is the mobile menu wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their clients, majority probably don't go mobile just because they're business to business, but mobile was still used about 35% of users. And in many other businesses, it's actually higher. It's close to two-thirds use mobile.
Maybe it's important to just also talk about the fact that when you're doing a website these days, if you make a website, it's not just one website that fits everything. You have to have a website that can adapt to any device that you're using. And that's super important because so many people do access websites through a phone or something like that. So it's not something that you can just ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. And those types of websites are called responsive websites. Responsive because it's responding to the screen size. So it could be as small as a small phone all the way to the new gigantic wide screens that are used by many businesses. So it's important to understand those nuances and adjust your website accordingly or have it adjust accordingly. Now, with that said, the other thing going back to the mobile menu is I strongly recommend that you or someone, and actually it's better if it's someone who rarely goes to your website, because sometimes when you go to your website, you just become out of touch with it because you're seeing it so often, you miss the obvious.
You're
I've
blind to
seen
it.
clients 2 years after the fact notice a typo that was sitting there because they
Hmm.
just had looked at it for so long they didn't even notice that it was mistaken. But get someone who, usually it's a friend, usually it's someone maybe within your company, your business, that doesn't go on your website too often, and just tell them like once a month, go through and just click around, make sure this stuff clicks, works, if you see any bugs. If that had been done, likely someone would have found the mobile menu issue. And do it on desktop, mobile, and a tablet ideally.
Also, if you have a teenager and you ask your child to do it, we've had so many clients that have their kids look at their site and then they realize that like they really need help with their website.
Hmm. Absolutely. And a lot of times I'll tell clients also take a look at your competitors' websites every so often. They may upgrade it, they may put new tools on there. Those can really give you an idea of what you're dealing with as far as competition goes to yourself as far as being an effective resource. So even if you're just referred, if they come to your website and don't feel like they're getting the information they need, they're going to leave. On average, you got 5 seconds to make an impression. I've made decisions where I had to hire a parrot company for my son's birthday, and I there were two in this in the Bay Area, and I picked the one whose website I actually could figure out.
Hmm.
So it can make a difference, and I would not shortchange it. So make sure the in-house person has at least a decent understanding of websites because that will probably everything will circle back to that. They
Hmm.
don't need to be able to build it, but just have them review it and regularly do it.
I think the other thing about websites too that business owners maybe underestimate is even if they're not getting a lot of leads directly from their website, what is on the website is what's determining what's ranking for them in terms of SEO.
Well, that's a good segue. The other thing about SOS was their SEO. And SEO is a very much a big word that means a lot that's very misunderstood. A lot of business owners look at it as voodoo science or they go, I don't know, Google does something and do it. And there is some degree of truth to that. Google does a lot and they don't tell you, there's no manual that says you do X, Y, and Z, you'll do it. And they're constantly changing the playbook.
Hmm.
But going back to my original comment, content is important. But as far as the website goes, it's also important to have what's called technical SEO be strong. On average, we do about 40 tests on a website regularly when we're doing SEO for them. And anytime we're evaluating something, we're checking those. And the in house marketing person should be able to check those and know how to fix them if SEO is of value to you. If
Hmm.
it's not as critical, most of it, but there are a few tests that it's still important. I would say one of them is page speed. Make sure your website is fast because, again, you got 5 seconds. If it takes 6 seconds for your website to load, people are gone. They're not
Hmm.
waiting for your website to load up. Next, make sure that there what's called redirects. There's not pages going to broken pages. Oftentimes people will put links to outside resources or they'll put links to pages, then they'll go delete the page or that outside resource goes away and that link goes away. Well, that's an SEO warning, but it's also a bad interface. So as it relates to outside resources, just make sure they understand the website as a foundational piece they should know because regardless of what it is, you'll probably have to do that unless you already have a website person outside of your in-house marketing person. Have you noticed anything else on websites, Jackie, and in-house marketing people?
One thing that this whole conversation brings to mind is if you are doing outreach on LinkedIn or any other profile or any other platform, in the attempt to get prospects, it's really important to not just have the outreach direct people to contact you on your website. So I think that one mistake that an in-house marketer can make is to just, try to link that outreach to a contact form on the website. And it's always better, really, to offer something that a prospect might want to take advantage of, and then you can more organically collect their information and start a conversation from there.
I'm going to add to that. If your in-house marketing person isn't skilled at what you're describing is called prospecting, if they're not skilled in prospecting, they may think, let me one and done it. Let me sit there and reach out once. If they don't reach back, I move on.
Mm-hmm.
This is often a very big mistake because the people you reach out to, it's like cold calling.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know you. They likely have never heard of you. If this is the first time you're sitting there and trying to talk with them and reach out to them and you don't reach out again, you probably will never get any leads doing this form of marketing. Your in-house marketing person should know, or you should at least direct them to reach out to them 7 to 8 times at the bare minimum before you think a lead is dead. It's amazing in our world nowadays that there's so much information out there that people don't realize how easily people will forget.
Mm-hmm.
And in-house marketing people generally are not the strongest at strategizing, and they are just doing the ABCs that you tell them. But keep in mind when you're talking about strategy, if prospecting is one of them, make sure that you not only that the content, but that they're doing it multiple times. So usually I will, if I'm working with an in-house marketing person, I'll work to craft multiple emails to promote and try to entice them to reach out, because you never know at what stage they may be ready. I'll give a personal example. I probably in a week get 100 messages on LinkedIn. I will during the week maybe notice 2 of them. I dismiss the rest. I just don't have the time, and most
Mm-hmm.
people don't. It really has to capture my eye at the right time, right place. So the other thing that is worthwhile for the in-house marketing person to do is not only reach out multiple times, but maybe even consider reaching out at different days and times. My Monday, Tuesdays are crazy. My Thursdays, Fridays are a little more manageable. But I know other business owners where it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what days of the week work better for you, Jackie?
I agree. I think Monday is always crazy. By Friday, I have a little more breathing room. Um, but I do think it's a really important point that if you have an in-house marketer and you're expecting them to kind of be a jack of all trades, the prospecting is something that you might really need either a professional prospector for, someone who really knows how to do that, or you might really need to get extra support for your in-house marketing person, because it truly does kind of go against a normal person's instincts to reach out to somebody 7 or 8 times without a response, but that's what it takes in order to really do effective prospecting.
So we've talked about prospecting, we've talked about the website and content. We've danced around one of the aspects that I think a lot of business owners hire in-house marketing people for, and
Mm-hmm.
that's social media. What should business owners know to ensure their in-house marketing person is doing strong social media activity?
Well, I really think that social media is the kind of thing where it seems like it's easy to do. On paper, there's just a certain number of steps that you need to take. But when it comes to practice, there's so many tiny little nuances about social media posting that if you don't get right, your content is just not going to hit correctly, and it can even really off-put people that are trying to, view your profile. So I'd say it's really important to have somebody do your social media who has a proven track record of being able to build a brand or being able to build a profile. It's really not enough to just have someone who knows how to create posts and, upload them on a schedule. Because when it comes down to the way that each post looks and the way that the grid as a whole looks and when these things are being posted and if you're adding it to stories and how much you're interacting with other accounts, there's so many factors that need to work together in order to make a successful social media campaign.
No, I completely agree with you. I would add an acronym I oftentimes relate to, which is VAC, VAC. Video nowadays is really important in social media. Accountability, which means measure results. Know what you're measuring, which I'll come back to in a second, but it's measure result. Don't just do social media for the sake of social media. And C, which is to me the most important thing, be consistent. Consistency.
Yeah.
If you're posting something on social media 1 month and then 3 months later you post something else, or even a week later you post it, you're going to get inconsistent results.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get anything moving.
And the algorithm really rewards that consistency.
Exactly. Because generally people who capture people on social media are capturing them because of the fact that they can rely on the exchange of information regularly. Which brings me back to the accountability. Set a goal, set what there is to measure, and then keep track of it. Usually it's a monthly cadence you're looking at. Did this month, do I do better than last month? And nowadays, a lot of times I tell people, look at impressions and engagement. And most people will say, well, why those? Because for those who don't know, impressions is basically how many times your post is seen. Engagement is how many times it's interacted with. So someone could see it by scrolling and they actually don't even see it. It just passes in front of their eyes. But the reason you want to measure that, because some people just, even if they don't see it, they'll capture, I saw something of them, and it gives your brand some visibility. But in the past, people would say, well, I want followers and leads. Number one, followers, less and less people are following people. It's still there. It's not dead, but it's not as common as it used to be. People have so much content they get, they don't have the time or the desire to just press follow for someone. So it's not as widely followed a metric. The other thing with impressions and engagement, it shows how much interaction there is and how much visibility. Leads is one where, again, social media is about increasing your visibility.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people see something on social media and will go, oh, let me grab that. So social media is a great tool to fuel an already burning marketing plan, but don't think it should be your primary for most industries. Some it's still good, but keep it in mind as a general rule. I say this because most marketing people you're going to bring in-house, you're going to bring them and say, hey, post on my social media. But you're never going to understand the benefits or results if you don't sit there and set the right goals and expectation metrics to review it.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there are platforms that can be used to measure those metrics. Daniel, do you have any favorites for measuring, all of those numbers that we're talking about on social media?
I really like reach. How many unique engagements there's been by users. It tells me how many users have seen that and interacted with it. It's, to me, it's my favorite metric in the social media space.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can use that native dashboard on Instagram to see all those things. And there's also with this whatever scheduling platform that people use, usually there's like an analytics function on that too.
What is a scheduling platform? Not all our listeners may know what that is.
Right. Well, one that we use is Loomly, but there's a lot of other ones out there that can help you with scheduling, and that way you can schedule your content ahead of time. That can really help with the consistency element of the posting.
So yeah, some you may have heard of, Hootsuite, Social Post. buffer. The advantages are the reason it helps with consistency is because now you don't have to remember that, oh, it's Monday, I got to do a post. It's Wednesday, I got to do a post. You can go in and spend maybe 4 hours a month and have all the posts for the month
Yep.
done. And if you have, doesn't mean you can't go back in and do edits or add stuff in between, but you at least have the consistency that we talked about.
Mm-hmm. And a scheduling platform can also help, to reach multiple channels at once. You can do LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is that you want to be reaching.
So let's talk about we uh, we talked about VAC as it relates to social media, but I want to take that A, the accountable part. How do you hold an outside marketing person accountable if you're a business owner?
I think it comes down to the metrics and some sort of KPI that you have to keep in order to make sure that you're hitting the mark.
What's a KPI? I know what it is, but our listeners may not.
A KPI is a key performance indicator, so it can help you to measure and track goals in certain areas of marketing. So, if you're doing social media and you want to, measure that reach metric that Daniel was talking about, you can track that over time, weekly, and then see in the bigger scale, how your reach is performing over time. That can really help you to stay on top of your postings and make sure that you're hitting your goals.
I'm going to add to what you're saying, Jackie. I think what you described is great. I would even say set goals with your outside marketing person, have regular meetings with your outside marketing person, assign tasks related to those goals, make sure your outside marketing person has the skill set, knowledge, or ability to learn whatever is needed for that. And then follow up regularly to see if they're being met. I'm going to come back to the skills and stuff in a second. But one of the things it's important when you're talking with these outside marketing people is don't let them run amok
Mm-hmm.
and you're not involved. You
Yep.
can't bring them on and expect them to be able to do everything you want them to. They don't read minds. They are not business owners. They are not going to do the effective job if it's not known. Now, going back to accountability, I also want to point out that when you're measuring results, I said, well, you can look at every month, but that doesn't mean as soon as there's a down month or several down months, you just say cut bait, because it's often a function of understanding what's causing it. What if it's your normal business cycle where these couple months are slower? And it's important to understand that marketing is looked like the stock market. You're going to have peaks and valleys, but as long as the trend line's up, it's going to be effective. But make sure the trend line is up. So if you're meeting with the person, they're doing the task, etc., and the trend line is going up, you're doing something right, even if there are some valleys and drops.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are drops and it's not turning around, that's where you need to ask yourself a question. Is it my marketing person not having the skill set? And or is it I need to pivot to a new strategy because the market has changed? Because what I was doing for marketing 5 years ago is not the same thing I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably won't be the same thing I'm doing in 5 years. Even if your business seems steady, always remember marketing is very dynamic and you need to keep adjusting to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's an important thing when you're talking about in-house marketers. If you as a business owner are not somebody who kind of like keeps their finger on the pulse of what's going on with, social media platforms and Google and all that stuff, the person that you have working on your marketing should be somebody who is keyed into that enough to know, oh, hey, Instagram is really prioritizing videos right now. I'm going to do more videos or whatever the case may be, being able to adjust.
So we've talked about different aspects to look at in your marketing. We've talked about it as it relates to an outside marketer and stuff and how to make sure they're effective. But let's go, it may seem backwards, but I think now is the time to go back and ask this question. And I'll let you, Jackie, kind of chime in on this one. What is it we need to, as a business owner, look for when we're bringing on an outside marketing person?
Well, I think any outside marketing person that gets brought in should be somebody who really has expertise in all of the areas of marketing that you're hoping to target. And that's going to be different for every business. Some businesses are going to be super heavy on their social media, and then they're going to want to bring in an outside marketer who has a lot of experience with that. Some people are going to really want to focus on prospecting, and they're going to need an outside marketer who has experience in that. But I think it's really a matter of making sure that the person that you bring in has the expertise that matches up with what you specifically need as a business.
And I'll say this. It doesn't hurt for you to write down what your goals are, what is the skills needed. And if you don't know what skills are needed because you're like, I don't know anything about marketing, ask. Go online and do research. Schedule time with a marketing person. Even if you pay a outside marketing company that you trust an hour's worth of their time just to ask those questions, it might save you from a bad hire. And then doing that, interview the people, validate that they have those skill sets, and then monitor, and do those check-ins like we talked about.
And that's something that we offer that I think is really cool specifically is we do that free assessment for businesses that are looking, for an insight into what they could use for their marketing. And that can really be like a good tool to help somebody figure out where those holes are that need to be filled and what their specific needs, could be to really amp up their business.
Before I leave our audience with a little tidbit for the podcast, anything else you want to add, Jackie?
I think one thing that I wanted to just pipe in about is we talked a bit about goals, setting goals. Something that I would always recommend is to do the SMART goal model, which is setting a goal that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That really can help amp up your goal setting.
And maybe that could be a podcast we'll do in the near future on how to set SMART goals, because that, I think, is an important statement you just made. But I agree with you. So with that said, know your goals, your SMART goals, know the skill sets that you need for your outside marketing person. Set up the metrics you want to monitor and check those metrics regularly and keep continuous feedback. If you do those, you can be successful with that outside marketing person, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because even if you spend a little bit more to get an outside person to review it, you'll at least make that outside marketing person more successful in the long run. This is Daniel and Jackie. We're Marketing Decoded. Looking forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast player. To sign up for your own free assessment, visit www.dcodetech.com/free-fitness-assessment.